Mhm. Hey everyone, it's Marley with Healing Chronic Illness with Marley podcast. I'm just very excited today to introduce you to somebody who's been really special to me, been a wonderful physician and a friend to boot. But his name's Dr. Jacob Teitelbaum, or lots of us affectionately know him as Dr. T. And yeah, he's pretty much one to help you heal holistically, and that's what we're always looking for. He's the author of From Fatigue to Fantastic, and you've probably heard me mention that. It's in its fourth printing now. Pain Free 123, The Complete Guide to Beating Sugar Addiction, Real Cause, Real Cure, The Fatigue and Fibromyalgia Solution, and Diabetes is Optional. And then, of course, I keep it on my phone. It's the free smartphone app, Cures A to Z. He's a busy guy, and what I also is, I kind of say that he's the fibro and chronic fatigue guru, because I kind of found him because I was desperate for answers and desperate for help and too sick to really get on an airplane to go anywhere for treatment. So I want to just introduce you to Dr. D today. And my funny story is he's the guy who got me out of bed. So welcome, Dr. T.
Welcome, everybody. And for those of you with whether you just have day-to-day fatigue, pain, or you have the worst form of the human energy crisis called chronic fatigue syndrome, fibromyalgia, or long COVID, these are all very treatable. We've now done 8 studies on effective treatment. 91% of you can recover. So we're going to teach you how. In fact, today, as part of it, and we will teach you in 1 minute how, even if you're fairly healthy, you can double your energy. So stay with us today, and we're going to turn your life around.
It sounds wonderful. Well, should we start with talking about kind of the physical attributes in healing and the SHINE protocol, and then kind of lead into belief systems?
Sounds like a plan. Either
Okay.
direction. Well, it's kind of like I find it when I'm following the God's breadcrumb trail. It doesn't matter which direction I'm going to, it all leads to the same place. So
Great.
we'll kind of take it all to whichever way it goes. So let's start with the human energy crisis. Why are we seeing the perfect storm for low energy? And we're seeing it for a number of reasons. One, life has become faster and more stressful. It used to be that if you wanted to send a letter, you gave it to the Pony Express. It took, if the guy survived, 12 months later, you might get a response. Now you hit send on an email, and 30 seconds later, ding, it's back. We have a media that really seems to feel like preaching hatred and fear and divisiveness is somehow the right message. That's a marketing thing. And but it really puts stress on our bodies. And I'm going to recommend that when what you're watching is leaving you full of hate and anger and fear, turn it off. Our diet, half of the vitamins and minerals are lost in food processing. 50%, all the calories are still there. So we're seeing so many different things, and then all the chemicals in the environment. There are many stresses on the body. Now, again, I think this is the best time in human history to live. I wouldn't trade it for pretty much any other time. But it's important, it's important to give your body what it needs to thrive, so you don't sink instead.
Yeah, I was thinking too that I think I'd read a statistic that back in Bible times, there was more stress in a year than what we have in less than a day here in our modern world, where things are convenient and easy. It's so much on the nervous system.
Learn to say no. Part of being healthy is having healthy boundaries, and we'll talk about that today. And again, it's just like when you're in a place of prayer, you'll know how things feel to you. I find that's how God communicates with me, is through feelings. So if something makes me feel bad, that's kind of God saying, say no. If something makes my heart sing and fills me with passion and joy, I'm going to say yes. So learning, that's how I set my boundaries. Everybody's different. But learning to say no to things that make your soul cringe is a really important part of staying healthy and keeping people from draining your energy.
And that's actually a real challenge for people that are empathetic or servant minded, or even people that are in the ministry. Some people don't have an off switch. Some people don't even have a dimmer switch. And those are those kind of people that get burnt out, right?
Yes, because they're misunderstanding. Again, my life is about service. My life is about compassion.
Sure.
My life is about love. My life is, at the end of the day, my life is about God. And if it's a funny thing, our immune system reflects our psyche. If we feel unsafe, our immune system will be weak because it's constantly on overdrive fighting everything. You'll see autoimmune disease, and then it exhausts. And the reason we have a healthy immune system, because our immune system is saying no all day to things that don't belong. So I think God's saying pretty clearly, by giving us an immune system, it's okay to say no. In fact, it's dishonest not to.
Right.
We are not being of service to anybody if we can't say no when we need to, if we can't keep our boundaries healthy.
Yeah, I agree with that. When I work with people with brain training a lot, I ask them, what is it that makes you feel safe? And sometimes you can know boundaries. And I've read and handed out the Cloud and Townsend book more than once. I probably have bought a half dozen copies in my life, but I think until you really have a revelation of what a healthy boundary is, it's hard to get there. And so we talk a lot about connecting the inner child with the higher self, because they're kind of the same person. And unless you can say no for yourself and your own protection, who's your gatekeeper? Nobody.
Exactly. And
Yeah,
if
your
you've never
nervous
had
system has to trust you.
Yeah, and if you haven't noticed, children are very good at saying no. It's as natural as could be.
Right. Yeah, I think sometimes just our societal norms pull us out of that, and that's why we struggle with saying no. But it's like putting your own oxygen mask on first, I guess, and
Bingo.
yeah, and being okay with it.
Yeah. And at
So
the end of the day, it sorts out. You'll learn. Your psyche will keep bringing you around. Your soul will keep bringing you around until you get it.
until
So
you
don't beat
learn,
yourself. Yeah, don't beat
right,
yourself up. It's just when you get
right,
that lesson, your soul takes you on. Okay, woohoo, got that one, up to the next level, and the
yeah,
next, and next.
right. So back in, I think it was 2012 is when I discovered you, and I had my first consultation with you in the comfort of my own home, which was good because, like I said, I was too ill to go anywhere. One of the main things that you told me then, before I went into the protocol and you gave me any advice, you told me that twice a week for 3 hours, if I could handle it, I needed to find something that brought me energy, that brought me joy. And I think for people that are ill for so long, they don't even know what that is anymore, especially if things like anxiety and depression and agoraphobia and all of that stuff that can set in, which is really just a label for you're in shutdown mode. We've talked a lot about that, about the autonomic nervous system kind of going offline. So tell a little bit too about why you personally got involved with helping people with chronic fatigue and fibromyalgia. Unpack a little bit of your story.
Well, people ask, what's a nice Jewish doctor like me? I was raised in a Hasidic community. My mom was in Auschwitz. It was a very old Eastern European transplant community after World War II. And I'm very empathic. And my mom being in Auschwitz, most of my community, most of my family having died in Auschwitz, they were challenged. I mean, that was a rough thing to go through. And so I was a bit on the ropes energetically in terms of and trying to be the peacemaker in the family. And my dad was dead, so I was paying my way through college. Did college in like 2.5 years because costs you pay by the year. So I did twice as many credits in a year, and I was kind of do it. And I was, paying my way through and working. And I went to med school and was one of the youngest in the class of 300, and was rolling all the way through, and while working as a nurse in Children's Hospital. And that was the easy part of my life. I made the mistake of becoming a peacemaker when my family went through meltdown, put myself in the middle. That drained my energy. I got what I call the drop dead flu. one of these nasty viral infections, and I was still bedbound. God knows how long later. I couldn't function. I didn't recover from that, and I couldn't go back to medical school, and I couldn't work. So I was homeless, sleeping in parks. And it's funny, part of where the universe where God brought me was to Tulsa. There's
It's
a
so
park
crazy.
there, and my '65 Dodge Start died in Tulsa. So probably a cube of metal there somewhere, and it's funny because people were so incredibly sweet. But I met all as if God put a holistic homeless medical school sign on my park bench. And there I was all scraggly because I was living on the road, and sometimes people brought pizza and I ate. But all these different healers and teachers taught me different things, and it's funny. Walked up to Oral Roberts to meet people. Some of the sweetest people you'll ever want to meet in your life. They're just amazing, amazing, love-eating people. Um, but it was through my period of being homeless and on the road that God taught me all the bits and pieces of what I needed to learn to recover. I was able to put it all together. For me, it was low adrenal, the candida, nutritional. These are some of the major things that caused me to trip the circuit breaker that we call chronic fatigue syndrome and fibromyalgia. Was able to go back to med school, got my honors in medicine, and that was 1975, and I've spent the last 40 some years researching, writing, and teaching about this. My goal is very simple: to make effective treatment available for everybody. And that's why I'm here today.
Yeah, and I love that you love people from ORU because I'm a graduate, so is my husband. But yeah, and it teaches a lot about living and healing the whole man. I mean, that's the whole basis of that college there. It's a body, mind, and spirit education. And so the takeaways being that you take care of the temple that you're given and develop your spiritual life. I think all of that is part of not just our day-to-day, but our healing when we're not well.
Yes, if it's once you're on the right path, health will naturally follow, even if it's not what we think it's supposed to look like.
Right.
Because sometimes our path is a lesson of even going through the pain and the rest. But I don't think it's ever really necessary. I think one can get what the lesson of the pain is. That maybe is often is simply saying no, and then you don't need it. Once you don't need the illness, it goes.
Interesting.
Then somebody like me will pop in your life and say, "Oh, we'll do this, this, and this," and it goes away. God will find it's easy for God to get rid of illness and to lead you in the right direction when you're ready.
Right. What do you think that attribute is when it's so common about autoimmune illness and the body attacking itself? How would you define that? And is that really a thing?
Well, of course, it's the thing. So the immune system is what allows us to keep our boundaries. It goes around the body. These are the cells, and the cells ask one question: are you self or other? And if it comes up against it, it goes self or other. It says self, it says have a nice day. And if it says other, it goes and it eats it. But here's what you don't realize is that so much of our immune system is guided by our psyche. I learned this when I was getting ready to uh, work on the burn unit at Children's Hospital. And I asked my psych professor to teach me hypnosis so I could do the dressing changes on these children with severe burns and have it not hurt so much. It's an easy thing. You just, what's your favorite TV show? Okay, picture it in your mind. Now jump on the TV set and be playing with Barney or whoever it happens to be. And that is as simple as that. And it puts you into a state where you're not noticing the pain and the rest so much. And what I learned is that if you get a burn and you quickly go into that deep state, it's the similar state as to being in deep prayer. And you let your psyche, your immune system know, heal quickly, no injury, you won't get a blister. And there's a good reason I'm not a surgeon. I'm a butterfingers, and I burn myself a lot. I get these big old fat blisters on my fingertip. But after that, I wouldn't blister. The skin would turn white and dead from the burn. But the blister is your immune system's response to a perceived injury.
Right.
So if I go in like dental surgery or whatever, before that, I would just go into a quick hypnotic state. a prayerful state. Now, I'd let my psyche know what's coming is a friend. It's here to help us heal. Welcome it, greet it, leave it alone. It's fine. And for those of you going through surgery, if you do this beforehand, now you can even do it in this disease where the gel is irritative and inflammatory. And you can let your psyche know that, okay, this little gel there, it's okay. Just ignore it. It's fine. Just let it be. But so the psyche can guide the immune system. And when the constant message we're being taught for fun and profit by the news media is be afraid, be very afraid, hate everybody, you're not safe.
Not safe, yeah.
The immune system is constantly striking out at everything because it doesn't know what the danger is. It just knows that it's there.
Yeah.
And you start to see what we're seeing now, which is this sharp increase in autoimmune disease. So step one is to let your immune system know we live in a friendly space. We're safe.
We're safe, yeah.
And settle it down that way. And then there's things like Curamed, which is a special form of curcumin. There's the fish oils like Vector Omega, all these things that can go ahead and settle down and balance inflammation and immunity. So there's so much that can be done. What your doctor will know about, because our continuing medical education is really slick advertising masquerading as science. It's basically pharmaceutical industry. And I love the pharmaceutical industry. They're really sweet people, but it's about making money. And it's also about blocking anything cheap that's competition to the expensive medications.
Right.
Once you understand that, you can make more sense about, no, this is all nonsense quackery. Use only this expensive medicine versus. And to me, I like the whole toolkit. God gave me a toolkit full of medications and natural remedies and mind-body things and prayer and all these different things. I like the whole toolkit. And again, I bless the pharmaceutical industry, even though they're saying only use a hammer. Everything besides a hammer is quackery.
Yeah, right.
Bless them, let them go. So there's much that can help autoimmune disease, but it's not all the $24,000 a year kind of stuff. There's low-dose naltrexone, which is 60 cents a day. Very, very, very effective. There's natural remedies. There's so many things that can help autoimmune illness.
So unpack a little bit about how that's disease kind of, and even the off-label of medications work in the brain. And the reason why I say that is because I know that when I got COVID back in January 2021, we talked about the frontline protocol. And even before I had it, you said, have these things ready to go in your toolkit. And one of them was an off-label SSRI, the fluvoxamine or Luvox. Yeah. And the more I thought about that, once again, it's calming the nervous system, which kind of keeps the lid on that inflammatory response. There's so much of it is about brain health.
Marley, definitions are important to understand. That something is off-label does not mean that it doesn't work. It certainly does not mean that there is no science or weak science behind it. All the being off-label means is that it is not patentable, and therefore nobody will pay the hundreds of millions of dollars in regulatory fees to put it through the FDA approval process. It's a quirk in our system. It is virtually impossible for anything cheap to be approved by the FDA to treat an illness or to prevent illness. And they're all good people. There's no bad people. They're all good people. It's just the regulatory system is set up for profit. If you haven't noticed, our government is owned by industry. And our politicians are all good people. We have simply told them the only way you're going to get your job is to take massive bribes. So take massive millions of dollars in bribes from industry and then come and represent us.
Sure.
Ain't going to happen. So off-label simply means cheap.
Okay.
Doesn't mean unproven at all.
I just figured that it's intended for this, but it can work also in this.
It was approved while it was expensive or before the FDA, before the drug industry controlled the FDA.
Sure.
It's a love-hate relationship there. But anyway, so all good people. But again, for for COVID, I will give the research suggests that the ivermectin does help. The Plaquenil
Mhm.
helps.
Mhm.
Luvox helps.
Mhm.
Pepsid helps. Vitamin
Right.
D helps. But all of these, again, they are cheap. And you would think by reading the media, which again is also controlled by drug company advertising,
Mhm.
that, oh no, this is all unscientific crap with no proof. Eh,
Right.
no,
Right.
these work.
Right. For sure.
But
Are
they're but
there,
they're but they're cheap.
yeah, are there any kind of developed nations or underdeveloped nations that don't have what Health Canada and the FDA have as far as
Yep.
a corrupt
But
system? And
no,
where would that be?
it's not a corrupt system. It's a system that is not controlled by money because they don't have the money.
Well, it seems a little
So,
corrupt.
but the thing is, it's not about, it's people are people,
Mhm.
and you're going to have the influence of money and power wherever
Right.
you are, whether it's big money or little. So again, they're all good people, but just
Mhm.
know what's the driving force.
Sure.
And again, look at the research. And I don't have a bias. I like the people at the FDA. I like the people at the pharmaceutical industry. I
Mhm.
like the people in the natural products industry. But
Mhm.
for me, it's where's the proof? What is this? I'm a scientist
Right. Right.
by nature, and there is no conflict between religion and science. That's a false conflict. God
Mhm.
created science.
Right. Right.
There's no conflict to me either.
Sure. Great
And the
point.
science shows that ivermectin decreases death rate 30 to 70%, but they don't put enough people in the studies to get statistical significance. So they
Mhm.
mislead people and say there's no evidence. Well, the evidence showed it is 91% probability that it dropped death rate 70%. Nope,
Mhm.
no evidence. I don't see
Right.
anything. No evidence there.
Yeah.
But here's
Sure.
the study. I don't see a thing. No.
Yeah. Right.
Oh, it's an expensive drug? Yeah.
Well, it is now. They
No,
price hiked it, I
ivermectin's
think. Yeah.
Ivermectin is still cheap. You can get it from a
Yeah.
compounding pharmacy, and it's not
It
expensive.
is, yeah, if you can find it cheaper for sure. What I've noticed in a lot of the Lyme community too is taking ivermectin for COVID has really helped their Lyme symptoms.
Yes,
Some people are getting over it.
it helps a lot of things. So anyway, this is just all good people. We have a quirk in our system that's basically
Mhm.
saying only the most expensive stuff is legal
Yeah.
to overtly discuss. So anyway, but let's go back. For those of you with fatigue,
Mhm.
what our double-blind randomized placebo-controlled study showed is that 90% average improvement in quality of life with what we call the SHINE protocol,
Yeah.
optimizing sleep, hormones, infections, nutrition, exercise as able. Not too much exercise, you crash and
Mhm.
burn, but
Mhm.
post-exertional malaise. But so let me start. For those of you who would just like to double your energy,
Mhm.
we have 4 studies we've completed in the last 2 years. 2 of those studies, one was on recovery factors. Well, 4 of those studies, but that's not available in the United States yet. It's
That's
available
good stuff.
everywhere in the world except the United States because who's going to pay $400 million to $2 billion for something that's low cost and not patentable?
That
So
was good stuff. I had it for a little while. I want some more.
yeah, yeah. Well, you know, wait patiently for the right.
Okay.
So, but there's 2 things that you can get that are readily available. Number one is the HRG80 red ginseng. Get the
Mhm.
chewable tablets. The chewables will be 1/4 the cost
Mhm.
of the capsules. So get the chewable tablets. Um, and 1/2 to 1 tablet a day. In fact, on my
Really?
desk over here,
Mhm.
there's one thing that I keep handy.
Yeah, I've got it in my kitchen counter too, and it actually tastes okay.
It
They're
tastes great.
fine.
Yeah, my
Yeah,
inner child goes, "Give me, I want one."
yeah.
So if I'm having a busy day, I take it.
Mhm.
1/2 to 1 pill. In the study, about 60% of people, and these were people with the most severe fatigue, found that their energy improved. An average, again, 60 to 70% increase in energy, stamina, cognition improved about 50%. Pain decreased, sleep
Mhm.
improved.
Mhm.
So when you improve healthy energy instead of energy
Yeah.
loan sharks, so
Mhm.
I would start with 3 things. You have a piece of paper and a pen. I'd take 3 things, and many of you will find your energy will double. One is a vitamin powder called the Energy Revitalization System, where one drink replaces literally 50 pills. It's the best multivitamin, I think, in the world. I did design that. My royalties go to charity.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I don't take money from the supplement companies. Um, so start with that. Energy Revitalization System vitamin powder. Add one of the HRG80 red ginseng chewables, and then get something called Smart Energy System. And again, you can find this at endfatigue.com, E-N like Nancy, D like David, fatigue.com, and do the three together. So Smart Energy System is ribose plus 5 other nutrients and herbs. And a study that we're just submitting for publication now showed, I think, a 70% increase in stamina just from the Smart Energy System. So these are simple, healthy things. Whether you have fatigue or just want more energy and improved cognition, give it 1 month, and most of you will find it'll rock your world. So for people asking, where do I begin? The N in nutrition, cut down sugar. Most people, salt restriction, if you're fatigued, is a bad idea. Unless you have heart failure, you want to restrict sugar. Stevia is okay. But salt restriction, especially if you get hangry, you get irritable when hungry, which is adrenal fatigue, you will crash and burn if you salt restrict. I think our medical advice to salt restrict, except those with heart failure or kidney failure, perhaps, is an unscientific myth. It's just not supported by the science. What you'll see if people say, but here's a review showing this. I say, okay, so this review quotes 10 other reviews, but it doesn't quote actual science. What the science shows is that in high blood pressure, salt restriction, the most difficult level of salt restriction you could do versus the most salt you can eat lowers blood pressure 1 millimeter, and black's 3 millimeters. It's nothing.
It's nothing. Yeah. And
Potassium increasing. You want to lower blood pressure, increase potassium in case. Get bananas, if you ate tomato juice, drink coconut water, get potassium, and maybe magnesium and vitamin D and other things to lower. So anyway, again, I just go with the science. I don't have an axe to grind one or the other. It's just what the science shows and what marketing shows. And we like our medical myths. It just blows. I've been in medicine 50 years. And it blows my mind how you say, but the research doesn't show that. Here's the research. I don't have time to look at that nonsense. And then they say, well, I've seen no evidence. Well, here's the study. No, I won't look at it. I've seen no evidence. And this is kind of the language, and medicine is not science. Medicine is religion based on profit. Sorry. It's a horrible religion.
Dr. T, can I get some links from you about some of your studies too? Because I like to share those. I'll email you about those.
Email me and I'll send you copies of the studies, and I'll send you the links. And for the Smart Energy System, I'll send you the data that the statisticians put together. And you can put that up because that's going to be submitted for publication.
Oh, wonderful. You said that. One thing I love about that whole system is every time, well, before I met you, I would try all types of adrenal support and it made me anxious. It doesn't. It gives this sustaining stamina like you talk about. So,
by the way, for those of you out there, because I know we're going pretty far afield today, if you have chronic fatigue or fibromyalgia or long COVID, you can email me. My email address is fatigue, FATIGUE, DOC, like doctor, fatiguedoc@gmail.com. And you can ask for the information sheets. There's a 4,000-word article that will just organize it and say, here's what's going on, here's how to recover. There's another sheet on orthostatic intolerance, which means you stand up and the blood rushes to your legs and stays there. So I'll send you these information sheets for free if you'd like. If you'd like copies of the study or links to the study, email me and I'm happy to send those too.
Okay, that's perfect. POTS was something that I really struggled with for a while in there as part of, things progressed with me. And I remember when POTS was just terrible. And I think taking some desmopressin and some B8 juice and a little more salt, and it reset whatever it was that ADH, whatever that wasn't working. finally got back online again. It was remarkable.
Yeah, understand, for those of you out there with fatigue, there's thousands of causes of fatigue, but when you can't sleep despite being exhausted, you trip the circuit breakers, an almond-sized area in the brain called the hypothalamus. It controls sleep, which is why you can't sleep even though you're exhausted. Controls your entire hormone system, which is why your hormones are low despite the blood tests being normal. And it controls autonomic function. That's the part that when we stand up and the gravity sends blood to our legs, sends the blood back up to our brain and muscles and heart. That's autonomic dysfunction. When that circuit's not working, none of those work, and you get what's called POTS, postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome. You might feel a little lightheaded when you stand up. You might find, if you've had it less than 5 years, when you stand up and in one place for 10 minutes, your pulse will go up more than 25 beats a minute. And this is a simple home test you can do that will tell you if you have the disease. And then it's not hard to treat unless you go to your regular doctor who doesn't know pots from pans. I mean, it's just,
So what is
Yeah.
some of that treatment protocol? Can you share? I mean, I know what it is, but and it worked for me.
Yeah. So again, it's just part of the shines. Sleep, hormones, and hypotension would be the pots. But increased salt, wear medium pressure compression stockings. That's 20 to 30 millimeter, because that will compress the legs and send the blood back up to the brain. Adrenal support like Adrenoplex can be helpful. As you mentioned, increasing the salt can be very helpful. But you also, for the medications, Florinef, DDAVP, Midodrine. So there's a mix of natural prescription things. The information sheet I send out just goes through all of the more
Perfect.
common
It's in there.
things.
Good.
It's
Good.
just all laid out and boom, boom, boom. Here's what you can try on your own. Here's what to ask your doctor for. Here's how to tell if you got the problem.
Perfect. Yeah. It seems like I hear more and more and more people all the time complaining about POTS, and even really young kids too.
Especially.
Oftentimes I ask, when did you hit your head? Because a lot of it has to do with some sort of issue with the brain.
Traumatic brain injury can also, has been shown in children. 44% of children with TBI will have hypothalamic pituitary dysfunction.
Yeah.
And this is severe enough that standard testing says so. It's much higher than that.
Yeah.
And the JAMA, Journal of AMA, where they said, and doctors just routinely miss it.
Right. Right. Okay. So sleep, hormones, infection, nutrition, exercise.
Yep. So let's talk about sleep a bit.
Yeah.
Because if you can't sleep, though, despite being exhausted, you trip the circuit breaker. You've got the process until proven otherwise. In terms of medications, Elevol, Flexeril, very low dose trazodone, there's literally dozens that can help in low dose. Natural remedies, things like terrific ZZZZ, which is essential oil, revitalizing sleep formula, EP120, sustained release melatonin. So again, most of you with this disease, when I say get your 8 hours sleep, you're saying, he's a nice guy, but he's an idiot. There's no way I can get my 8 hours sleep. And I will tell you, yes, you can. You just need
Even
to know
if you
how.
have to take a little cocktail for a while.
Even if you need to take a mix of a low dose of 8 things, works better with less side effects than a high dose of 1.
Right. Right.
So sleep, hormones, thyroid, achy, weight gain, cold intolerant, you need thyroid hormone by prescription, no matter what the tests show, pretty much, unless they show your T4 is high. Adrenal fatigue. How do you tell that your stress handler is exhausted? You get irritable when hungry. If you're not sure if you get hangry or not, ask your beloved and tell them that you will not kill them if they answer honestly.
Right. Right.
But irritability when hungry, and I had that. It's funny. My former wife, may she, God bless her and keep her far away. And I asked my son, who's like 7 years old, he said, how do you handle her moods? And she said, I just feed her when she gets that way.
Yeah.
He had the wisdom of a 7-year-old, and he teased me later on in life. He said, I did the same for you too, Dad. You have that also.
You had it as well.
So Adrenoplex is a nice mix of herbs and nutrients that will smooth out and support the adrenal glands, way cheaper than a divorce lawyer and those kind of things. But again, irritability when hungry, treat the adrenals. If you're a woman in your 40s and you find that the fibromyalgia symptoms are worse around your menses when your estrogen and progesterone drop, find a holistic doctor to give you bioidentical estrogen, progesterone, and perhaps even testosterone, a hormone replacement. And then there's other hormones, as you noted, antidiuretic hormone for POTS, blah, 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 blah.
Mhm.
But H address those
Yeah.
infections. The main infection, certainly there are dozens of infections, Lyme disease, COVID, Epstein-Barr, that can trigger this trip to circuit breaker. They can be viral, they can be antibiotic sensitive. But especially important is Candida. If you have nasal congestion, chronic
Yeah.
sinusitis, postnasal drip, irritable bowel syndrome, gas, bloating, diarrhea, constipation, and you have fibromyalgia, I will treat for Candida with diflucan, medication, natural antifungals, and a good probiotic, and cutting back sugar, which feed yeast. And there's no test that I would give a nickel for Candida. It's based on symptoms and response to treatment. So you start to see how shine, the simple things you can do. And we talked about nutritional support, decrease sugar, increase salt, energy revitalization system, HRG80 red ginseng, smart energy system. For coenzyme Q10, there's a chewable made by a company called Europharma that the 100 milligrams is equivalent to 700 to 800 milligrams. That's what I'm switching my people to. That's what I take myself. So it's a Europharma chewable 100 milligram coenzyme Q10 or CoQ10.
Okay.
I take that myself each day. My energy is sky high. I have energy for whatever I want to do. And there's just simple things that create healthy energy.
Right. Like sunshine in Hawaii.
Like sunshine in Hawaii, like following your bliss, like listening
Yeah.
to, following what is it that gives us joy? What
Right.
is it that makes our soul sing? For me, like I say, it's I'm blessed and gifted. I have a most wonderful wife for me in the world. It's funny, the most beautiful girl in the world. And she was attracted not to guys who like fast cars or music or sports. She's attracted to science geeks. Thank you, God, and she was willing to marry me. So I have everything I need.
I
We have
love
five
that.
five healthy kids and that are wonderful. My joy is in service, not
Sure.
because I sacrifice, not because I'm a godly man. It's
Mm.
because that's what gives me the most joy in the world. What's more fun than helping 1,000 people, in a day to get their life back?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, since you brought up Lori, talk a little bit about energy work, because I know that she's an NAET practitioner, and that's something I'd done for several years as well with another
It's
practitioner.
It's funny, we talked about how when I was in med school, they called me the ghost because I would be in the medical library at 3, 4 in the morning, ghosting through the stacks. And my routine was I would take a journal from 100 years ago, 20 years ago, and this week from the same journal. And just to get perspective on what was happening.
Yeah.
And what I found is there came a time I was seeing these amazing studies by people that my textbooks were named after. The giants in their field, doing things like in multiple sclerosis, which is called hysterical paralysis back there, or hysterical blindness. They found that if people were blind in one eye from the MS, if they took different metal plates and put them on different areas of the body, the blindness would shift immediately from one eye to the other. They reclaim. And, it's like, oh my God, why aren't we learning any of this? This is a study by Professor Guyton, who my neurology text is called Guyton's Textbook of Neurology. It was like, and then suddenly this stuff all stopped. And you can see it was around the time pharmaceutical industry was coming up. And I can only imagine that the message went out that you stop doing this nonsense on biophysics and you focus on medications and biochemistry, or you're going to be out.
Right.
And the ones who kept doing it, they just didn't get published anymore. And they found themselves out the door of the university. And the ones who listened, they rose and they went up. So in the West, biophysics was attacked and slammed because our body has its own physics about it.
Right.
Where in the Eastern world, where they couldn't afford expensive medications, biophysics in the form of acupuncture and similar things flourished. So not using biophysics is like giving up half of our medical toolkit. And it's funny, as my the gal I married, was learning about using NAET. It's a form of acupuncture that gets rid of allergies. And I had horrible hay fever and ragweed allergies, and I was especially miserable one day. And she said, "Let me treat you." And I'd say, "I can knock it on 20 minutes." And I said, "That voodoo's not going to help me. Leave me alone." And I was so miserable one day. I said, "Okay, go ahead." And 20 minutes later, my hay fever was gone.
It's
And
resolved.
we got married. We had a beautiful little healing center that I built in the woods near our home. And I see these children come in, autistic, who would go out being little chatty Cathys and
Mhm.
healthy, And I said, "What are you doing?" And she said, "Well, the NAT, their autism goes away." And
Mhm.
we talked to other practitioners who had the same experience. So our foundation funded a study that was published. I was the lead author on it, where 30 kids with autism were treated. There are 30 untreated in the control group. 23 of those 30 kids treated with NAT were back in regular school after 1 year.
Mm.
So when you're looking at biophysics, again, all this is just like magnets and
Mhm.
MRI machines. This
Mhm.
is all biophysics. It's not
Mhm.
anything about it. It's just physics.
Mhm.
And um, using the biophysics can be helpful for some things, not helpful for other things.
Mhm.
It's just physics.
Well,
But at
and
a
just,
lab,
yeah,
just like everything cheap for COVID has been attacked,
right.
anything that's not an expensive medication in our system will be attacked or
Mhm.
ignored.
Mhm. Well, and things like energy and working in the quantum field, where whether it be you're working with I don't know, Reiki massage or prayer,
Yeah,
it's energy work. And
yes.
just because it's hard to measure, you know, doesn't mean it doesn't work.
Well, I talk about being no conflict in my world between science and religion, and because science is the tool I'm going to understand that word, for measuring those things that we have tools to measure, which
Mhm.
means our outer world. Monitor, measure, test.
Mhm.
But for things that we don't have tools to measure, which is our inner world, world of spirit,
Right.
the tool that God gave us for that is religion. It
Mhm.
may not be as precise in some ways, um, but this is a tool we have for measuring the inner world. So there's no conflict to me there.
Mhm.
It's just recognizing that our tools are developing for both.
Mhm.
And what are we trying to measure? For medicine to say we can't test it so it doesn't exist,
Mhm.
love doesn't exist. What? That's idiocy.
Mm.
It's
Yeah.
pure idiocy. That's a religious statement. And science is a wonderful tool, and it's a god awful religion.
Right. Well,
Mhm.
and what about there's a lot of conversations that I've had with friends over the years, and I think that whether it's practicing yoga or different energy work, to me, I think some of the people in the Christian faith, particularly, they've been told in church that, that's ungodly. But I think the sad part to me is that I think a lot of those could be tools that they could step into and use and be set free and be healed from some things.
Well, I was raised in a Hasidic seminary as a
Mhm.
Hasidic Jew. I mean, I was in college with my Hasidic beard and my kippah and my yarmulke on and the whole thing.
Mhm.
And, you know, um, when you look at the suffer not a witch to live, or statements like that in the Bible.
Mhm.
But I would ask the rabbis, I say, yes, but the great Jewish teachers, the Rambam, they would heal,
Mhm.
wave a hand and they would do, it's like prayer and healing.
Mhm.
It's, a concept was that it was allowing God to use us
Mhm.
as opposed to trying to manipulate
Sure.
energy for our own purposes,
Right.
but when you're allowing God to use us for the greater good. So that's
Mhm.
just how I hold it.
Yeah.
And that's why there's so many rabbis and priests and ministers who have been incredible healers.
Mhm. Mhm.
So using energy, this is just another way of saying using God. This is like
Right.
anything else. It's not that it's inherently good or bad. A hammer is not good or bad. If I
Right.
use
How
it
it's
for a nail,
used.
it's good. If I use it to smack somebody on the head, it's not so good.
Right.
And if somebody's doing energy work, are they using it for healing? Are they using it for blessing?
Hmm.
And certainly watching these autistic kids getting their life back is a blessing.
Exactly. God would be in that, right? For sure.
And God
Mhm.
has to be in that.
Yeah.
You're seeing, you're seeing
Right.
healing going on. Yeah.
Right.
So it's
Wow.
just my way of looking at it. And everybody has their own. And, if I invite people, see what feels the best for you. And the things that I say that appeal to you, feel free to make them your own. And the things that don't, there are shoes that don't fit, just toss it.
Hmm. Yeah. One of the things that you told me probably in the last couple of years, and it's a quote, it's a Dr. T quote. I've used it to share with other people is, because some of us that were raised in that faith culture, it's like faith over fear, and fear's a feeling, and all of those things. And you're supposed to sit on your feelings and not be led by your feelings. And there adds some confusion in
How
there.
do you think God communicates? How do you think the spirit,
Well,
I
I'm
find
just
spirit
saying
communicates through feelings.
yeah, it's been some churchy teaching, not so much some scripture teaching, I think. And so it causes some confusion. But what you told me was, and it was just a light bulb came on. You said, feel the feeling until it no longer serves you.
Yes, feelings must be felt. It doesn't mean that eh, feelings are always valid. What we think we're feeling it about is usually wrong. It's
Mm-hmm.
some little event triggered a feeling from some big thing
A long
30,
time
50
before.
years ago.
Right, right.
So just to realize that it's it's not about right or wrong. It's about feelings simply need to be felt.
Mm-hmm.
And then when they no longer feel good, you'd be amazed how good it can feel to be angry. And ask
Have
my
a good,
wife,
yeah.
she'll tell you I love a good self-righteous hissy fit.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Get me on a soapbox and
Right.
sky's the
Mm-hmm.
thunder. Doesn't mean I'm right.
Right.
And there's nothing wrong with the feeling. But I
Mm-hmm.
will note that fear has been called false evidence appearing as real,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
to me is the opposite of love.
Mm-hmm.
And caution is not the same as fear.
Mm-hmm.
And fear rarely feels good. And again, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into kind of a prayerful state.
Mm-hmm.
Because in Judaism, we were raised that God talks to everybody all the
Right.
time.
Right.
It's not the special rabbi.
Mm-hmm.
God talks to all of God's children. We're all God's children. So it's as natural as a child for me to have conversations regularly with God. I still do.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't mean I'm any more knowing than anybody else. It's just
Mm-hmm.
God talks to all of his children, as the rabbis say, but sometimes you're not able to bow down low enough to the ground to hear because he speaks in a still small voice,
Right. Right.
you know.
Mm-hmm.
So um, I'll go into a prayerful state and I'll see what makes my soul sing. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to figure that's the truth.
Mm-hmm.
And
And yeah.
there's discernment. Does it bring out love and make me closer to people?
Mm-hmm.
Then I'm going to figure that's more likely true. Does it make
Right.
me fearful and judgmental of people and push people
Mm-hmm.
away and make me better than them?
Right.
I'm going to, I'm not interested. I'm not saying it's false. I'm just not interested.
Right. Well, something else that I heard you say too is, you take all the different religions in the world, and there's countless ones who, and I used to think this when I was growing up. I grew up in Canada where there were a lot of different, I wasn't in the Bible Belt until I moved to college, but when I was in Canada, there was such a fusion of so many belief systems. And I used to have this thought when I was younger, well, who am I to think that I got it all together, that I really know? And then
Who's
as
to
I,
say that there's any one right or wrong?
right or wrong. And one of the things that you had said was,
Mm,
with all the stuff that's going on, if God was really that loving and we didn't have it all exactly right, then what?
I can't imagine. I have 5 children. I'm incredibly blessed. And I can't imagine putting them in a massive room and putting 5,000 guidebooks around, all of them totally different, saying opposite things, not
Mhm.
telling them telling them having people walking up and saying, this one's the right one, this one's the right one. And then if they take one misstep, sending them to hell for eternity, it's like, it's incomprehensible as a loving father that I would do that. And it's incomprehensible to me as a loving father that God would do that. So I don't know. I don't know. This is everybody. I leave it up to you to figure out your own with it. But
Well,
what I will tell
conserve
you
a lot of
though,
energy.
is that I think, in the way that I was taught, and in the seminaries, is that, and in the Bible, that for every illness, God creates the antidote and the healing to it in nature. And this is part of the Hasidic tradition going back countless centuries. And there's nothing that can't be healed, is how I'm coming to feel. Sometimes the healing for it is death. Sometimes it's finishing it up and going back home. But most of the time, if you're falling out of an airplane and you're plummeting to the earth and you're 3,000 feet from the ground, then say prayers and prepare. But for most things, most people are not yet out of the plane and plummeting. Most illnesses and chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia, long COVID, all of these, and again, you just email me at fatiguedoc@gmail.com. I'll send you the information sheets, and it'll say, here's what's going on, here's how to get better. This is not rocket science. It's just not expensive, so you're not going to hear about it through the healthcare system.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for sharing with us all of your information. And I've always enjoyed visits with you. You've kept me intact more than once.
My honor, my pleasure.
I've learned an awful lot from you, but I appreciate you so much, Dr. T. Thank you for your time today. And anybody who wants to reach out, you know how to reach them by email. And aloha and happy holidays to you.
Aloha,
enjoy.
Be well.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.